wider consequences that come from not having access to water, right? Because beyond causing serious illness, it prevents children from getting an education because they need to help with water retrieval. This is something that disproportionately impacts girls and women, as they're seen as the ones in charge of managing water and cooking and cleaning, with Face's website adding, the lost number of potential school days and education hinders the next generation of African women from breaking out of the cycle of unequal opportunity for gainful employment. With safe water nearby, women are free to pursue new economic opportunities and improve their families' lives. Also, in this situation, you have others arguing that this whole controversy highlights far more than just the issues with water in African countries, right? Some pointing to larger issues with income inequality. And understandably, while a number of places have this issue, a lot of the focus was on Kenya, as that's where a lot of MrBeast's video took place. And actually, with that, CNN pointed to a Kenyan activist who suggested that MrBeast's video brought shame to the country, right? Saying leaders get grants for cars, but somehow there's no money to drill more holes for wells so people can have drinking water. And actually, to dive into that, you had Reuters doing a report back in 2018 noting that while Kenya's economy had grown roughly 5% annually over the last decade, it has not been equally distributed and has made the gap between the rich and the poor wider. And this is a small minority of Kenyans receive the wealth, and it's not trickled down. With the Kenya Fight Inequality Alliance telling the outlet that, quote, faced with a fiscal crisis caused by corruption and overborrowing, the government is choosing to balance the books on the backs of the poor by increasing the cost of the basic goods like food. And there, the report noting that at the time, the government had proposed a 16% tax on things like flour, gas, and bread, with groups like Oxfam also saying that corporate tax dodging is undermining Kenya's tax base, explaining Kenya is losing $1.1 billion a year to tax exemptions and incentives, almost twice what the government spends on its entire health budget in 2015-16. Oxfam also highlighting budget issues, saying that even though a quarter of Kenyans lack access to regular healthcare, only 6% of the government budget goes to health. Also, more recently, with the AP doing a report in 2022 about how elections at that time highlighted wealth inequality, right? As the People Watch campaign spend millions and millions of dollars while the rest of the country is working, unable to even save money. Mind you here, the public doesn't even get to know where that campaign money comes from. Then there are also issues with malnutrition, with USAID saying that 26% of children in Kenya are stunted, a sign of chronic malnutrition. And while yes, there have been improvements in recent years, there are still parts of the country where this is a massive problem. And so of course, with this one, I'd love to know your thoughts. I think this is like a different version of the same thing regarding, once again, the so-called scandal. Right? I think there are things you can criticize MrBeast for. I don't see this as one of them. Right? I don't see MrBeast coming in and doing these things as a failure in any way of activists and people trying to make the world better. Rather, I think they should light a bigger fire under politicians, the people who actually have the power to do something. Right? In this case, he was in Kenya and other African countries, but oftentimes he also highlights issues back here in the US that it should add a spotlight to, not just that shit is fucked, but why shit is fucked. And as it is in a lot of situations, it's largely because the haves trying to keep away the have-nots. Money, resources, access to those things. That's control. We wouldn't even be having this very important conversation right now, nor would the lives of those featured in the video be better off if MrBeast didn't take the time here. Which is not to say, get on your knees and pray to the almighty Jimmy, but it's weird to just fucking take it out on him. But again, that's a story, my opinion, and whether you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear from you. And then, I've never thought to myself, Florida prison, that sounds like such a good time, but some of the stories we're seeing pop up in the news right now are horrifying. And I say that because, among other things, 14 current or former inmates spoke to Insider, as well as there being 22 lawsuits describing how guards lock them inside filthy shower stalls for hours on end. And those reports coming from over 30 facilities over the past 2 decades, and the details are just nauseating. You've got people saying they were left in these cold and unsanitary stalls, often in wrists or ankle restraints, deprived of food and water. And then when they were finally delivered food, they described having to balance the tray and eat while standing up because the alternative was to sit on a moldy, crumb-covered, bug-infested, piss-soaked shower floor. But also, some of them were there so long they couldn't stand up anymore and they just sat down. And in fact, for one man, he says he was put in a stall for 23 hours over the summer and given no bathroom breaks, just a plastic bag to defecate in. And with that saying, when they feel like they want to punish you, they put you in the shower for hours. They do that all the time. The shower will drive you crazy. And with that, you had several more inmates backing up that claim that they were being punished. On the other side, you had some arguing that staff just used those stalls as temporary holding facilities while they were being transferred somewhere else. But regardless of the real or the official reason, lawyers say that is a clear violation of Florida's Department of Corrections policy, especially when the guards abused inmates and kept them in the showers despite health concerns. Like this one guy who claimed in a federal lawsuit that officers at one facility threw him against the wall, smashed his face, and then locked him in a shower stall for 6 hours without medical treatment, and saying he defecated in there after his requests to use the bathroom were rebuffed. And now, 15 years later, he still has chronic pain and a metal plate in his face. And there, a judge actually dismissed his case long ago because he supposedly failed to exhaust the prison's grievance processes. Except very notably, we see from some of these reports that prison guards allegedly retaliate against inmates who use that process. process, right, with 3 different men alleging that they were locked in shower stalls after filing grievances, protesting a cellmate assignment, and simply requesting medical assistance. And then you have another inmate alleging in a federal lawsuit that he was locked in the shower after a corrections officer sexually assaulted him, with the CEO denying that allegation, though later resigning and settling the case. Also, in at least 3 cases, inmates filed civil complaints alleging that they were locked in the shower after expressing suicidal thoughts, with, for example, one transgender woman at a men's facility saying she attempted to take her own life inside the shower after this happened to her. And then at another men's prison, she says she went on a hunger strike after Ron DeSantis signed a bill restricting access to gender-affirming care, with officers allegedly leaving her in a shower stall for 5 hours as they tried to find an open suicide watch cell, with them allegedly not delivering her medication, though she says they did serve her dinner there with peanut butter, which she also happens to be allergic to. But suicidal inmates weren't the only ones who almost died from this practice, where, for example, in 2018, a man was allegedly left in a stall for 12 hours without a bathroom break. So he peed and he pooped into a potato chip bag. And then, after he left, another inmate was thrown in there for almost an hour, and you had the water quickly filling the stall, mixing with the bag, reaching open wounds from diabetes on his ankles. And that guy then suffered a bacterial infection that hospitalized him for 2 months and nearly killed him, with him ultimately losing the use of his legs, and he could no longer stand or use the bathroom on his own. But again, we saw multiple courts dismissing his case, saying that the officer who refused to let him out of that stall, despite him begging, has qualified immunity. And as far as what Florida Corrections had to say, when Insider asked them why they appear to routinely break their own rules on this practice, they just replied that any officer caught doing it would be held accountable. But given the whole everything we just talked about, that doesn't really seem to be the case. And then, y'all, Swifties in Argentina are in their political activism era, with seeing fans across the country taking their fan power and using it for political activism ahead of a runoff election later this month. Which, with that, I gotta give you some background here. The presidential election is between Economy Minister Sergio Massa and far-right Libertarian candidate Javier Milei, with reports noting that Milei has spoken out against abortion and sex education, rallied against political correctness, and also denies humans' impact on climate change. And with that, you have many reports saying that he needs to have that youth vote to be successful. But you have Swifties in the country wanting to make sure that does not happen. With Taylor Swift, of course, being one of the most popular people in the world, and of course she's used her platform in the past for political reasons, especially pushing against conservatives, this has now gained international attention, with outlets like the New York Times pointing to one group called Swifties Against Freedom Advances, with that being Milei's party, and they previously posted Milei equals Trump. Now, that account actually got suspended for some reason, but it had a reach before it was taken down. And they're having posted a mission statement that was viewed 1.5 million times before the removal. And so now the fans are using a backup account where they reposted that statement and noting that, as Taylor has said in the past, they need to be on the right side of history, and adding that they need to come together and discuss this election, especially as Taylor is set to bring her Eras tour to Argentina this weekend. Right, so they see this as a key time to mobilize. And with, of course, everything Swiftie, like, they have their own culture things. Right, some of the things they're talking about are just like pure Swiftie. Like, instead of just regular friendship bracelets, they have anti-Milei friendship bracelets. They also have graphics quoting her songs to say things like, "I don't know about you, but I'm feeling Massa 2023." Though others just being straight and blunt with what they're saying. Swifties, we do not vote for Milei. On November 19th, we are not going to vote for the candidate who does not respect the struggles of women and diverse people. We are not going to vote for the candidate who proposes taking away the rights of all Argentines. And notably, this is not just a one-front stan war, because Swifties aren't the only ones working together against Milei. You have the BTS army rallying against him as well. And there, part of that has to do with the fact that his running mate previously mocked the band, saying their name sounded like an STD. And so the BTS army fought back, calling the running mate xenophobic. And what's really wild and crucial here is that these kind of fan campaigns do tend to reach young people, and young people are a massive part of Milei's base. Now, as far as what he thinks about all that, he addressed the Swifties during a radio interview, with him trying to shrug this off, saying, "I'm not the far right, they can express what they want." And notably, Taylor herself has not said anything about Argentina's election, right? This is a fan movement. But as far as if that changes, we'll have to see when she performs there, both if she says anything or will we see any sort of meaningful rally there. And also, we'll have to see who the hell is going to win this election, because the race, just, at least according to the polling, is getting just tighter and tighter. And then, are you feeling the effects of inflation? And I ask because I just saw gas over $6 in LA. Maybe you feel like you're working to get ahead, but you seem to be falling further into debt with credit cards, personal loans, medical bills. And you may have thought, is there another solution to paying off your debt? Well, actually, thanks to today's sponsor, PDS Debt, they have customized debt savings options for anyone struggling right now. Right, if you're making payments every month on your debt and your balances aren't going down, listen up, because PDS Debt rolls all of your payments into one low monthly payment based on what you can afford. Everyone with over $10,000 or more in debt qualifies, and get this, there is no minimum credit score required. PDS Debt offers options with no interest. You can pay off your debt in a fraction of the time, saving thousands in interest and fees. And PDS Debt is giving you beautiful bastards a free debt analysis just for completing the quick and easy debt assessment at pdsdebt.com/DeFranco. Yeah, you'll receive a full breakdown on how to save on interest each month and the quickest way to take care of your debt. So just go to pdsdebt.com/DeFranco and get your quick and easy debt assessment today. today. It's time to take back control of your life and live for you, not your debt. And then banning Airbnbs is a very good thing. That is what many are shouting from their rooftops right now after New York earlier this year decided to crack down on Airbnbs. Because back in September, after some serious pushback from Airbnb and landlords, New York City passed a law that heavily limited short-term rentals. And we saw in a matter of weeks nearly 20,000 Airbnb listings in the city going up in smoke. And very key here, a big motivation behind the law was rent prices, with the thinking at that time being that by limiting short-term rentals, those properties would then turn back into long-term housing and landlords would have a lot more competition, and in theory, rent prices would drop. And actually now, thanks to a recent case study published in Real Estate Economics, there's real evidence to back up that thinking. With this specific study focusing on Irvine, California, a city that banned Airbnbs back